Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Secret Dazzle.
Let's do some words.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have something that'll make you feel better even before we get to the words themselves, is that we have 2 new Patreon sponsors.
Those guys are the best.
Somehow, given the fact that we've drastically reduced the frequency of our episodes, for which we apologize. But
we so apologize. I'm sorry.
People,
life has
understand.
Not been available.
It's not been here. So our 2 new Patreon sponsors, we have Zarek, which is a cool name.
Yeah.
And someone with a username Topath_60x, for which I assume there is a whole heap of internalized and cryptic meanings that I'm not privy to. But what I do know is they're both awesome.
Entirely. We're and we always kind of tend to say the same things on these hallowed occasions, but we really, hashtag grateful becomes a bit of a thing that everybody says. I really am grateful that people support us in all of the many small and large and in between ways that people support us to do this thing.
Yeah.
And you particularly when, it's been hard recently. It's mainly, dear listeners, it's been hard for Ryan to pin me down to an actual arrangement that I remember and I'm in the right space and time zone and place to do a thing. And he is infinitely patient, and really, he should have kicked me in the arse so many times by now. I'm surprised he's not on a plane right now to do exactly that. So we're not professionals, and we do this because we like to do it, and it's fun, and we like words, and we like you, and we like each other. So the support is so very, very much appreciated.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And also I just realized we have had a couple of emails come in about our discussion about hiatus and vinegar and a couple other things, but I just completely neglected to send them to you or indeed print them off so we could talk about it. So that'll be for next time. But just to anyone else who did not send us emails, why the heck not?
Yeah, man.
Feel free to do that.
We love emails.
Because emails are awesome, and it's nice it's a very one-way medium sometimes.
You know what I really love? Let's get properly old school here.
Okay.
When was the last time somebody sent you a handwritten letter?
Oh, geez, I can't even remember. We should have a P.O. box.
We kind of should.
For the podcast. And
I feel like word nerds like writing letters, real ones.
I feel like we'd get some cool ones. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's going to be a thing.
I've come over all dusty
getting a P.O. box
nostalgic.
for the show in case people want to send us postcards or whatever.
That'd be super cool.
That would be cool. But anyway, so thank you to Zarek and Topath_60x and everyone else who is a long-suffering Patreon supporter and everyone else who is a long-suffering Lexitecture listener. So
like San Dimas High School football, you rule.
You rule. Excellent Atari's reference. Well done. Would you like to go first this most eminent of weeks?
Why ever not?
That's the spirit.
Feels like it's been a long time. It hasn't actually been that long time. Just a lot of things have happened in my brain since then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Einstein, for pointing out that time doesn't actually have to be the same length of time.
Yeah, way to ruin it for everyone else there, Al.
So, the word I'm going to talk about today, do you know, I don't know about you. I think we've probably discussed this before, but I'm always sure when I think of a word that I decide I'm interested in, I'm always sure that we've talked about it before.
Oh, yeah.
To the extent that like
Every
one
time.
of the first sort of like I hesitate to call it a research process because I'm just too haphazard a human being for that.
Process is a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, that I feel I am endowing myself with qualities which I may not be able to back up with evidence. But part of the, you know, one of the things that I do these days, pretty much every single time, is very quickly I go to our website and I check to see if we've done this word before.
Yeah.
And I was really like properly convinced that we had already discussed the word secret. But in fact,
no, I don't think we have.
we have not. Yeah, I was so sure. And one of the things that made me particularly sure about this is, and it's a bit of a, oh, well, of course this has happened. Why would it not have happened? But I believe I'm going to presently be talking about a pie root that we've discussed before. I cannot for the life of me track down which word it is that is derived from said pie root that we have discussed before, but maybe you'll be able to enlighten me as I continue to discuss this word.
Neat.
So, secret.
Yes.
Adjective and noun. And it's first cited in the OED in Langland in 1399. Letur conseil corretit, for that it is secret. So many extra letters and weird-ass characters within that small sentence. You know how I love this shit.
Yes.
But yeah, 1399. So people have been keeping things secret for a very, very long time.
It's been
the
a while.
OED defines it as something that is kept from public knowledge or from the knowledge of persons specified, not allowed to be known, or only by selected persons. Okay?
That's fairly concise.
Yeah, the second sense is of a place. It is a place that is removed from the resort of men, or lonely or remote. And it's sometimes also used of time. This is rarely, and that's chiefly an archaic usage.
Yeah.
And the first reference there is from the wonderful, wonderful William Dunbar, a Scottish poet, from about 1513. You can also describe a person as being secret. That usage dates from 1528. And we have actions that are secret, 1548, doctrines, 1526, feelings, passions, thoughts, desires, 1548 also. And essentially, it means the same thing. People just applied it to more and more things. You know, it became an adjective that could be applied to more nouns than it used to be. Such technical language. I'll try and not baffle you with jargon any further. Etymologically, it is interesting. Here's why. It's made out of two pie roots joined together. Yay!
Nice.
What's better than pie? More
Double
pie.
Double-decker pie.
Double-decker pie. Now, just as a small side note, we've both been watching Resident Alien.
Yeah.
Now,
It's
I don't know
so
if you've had it in the same format as us, but it's been released here as the second season. The first 8 episodes have dropped, and the second 8 episodes are due to drop like next week.
Oh.
So you've just seen all 16 episodes.
I don't. I'll have
You
to
don't
check.
know. Ah, okay.
I thought that I had seen, although I do remember it ending on a weird kind of cliffhangery bit that didn't feel right for the end of a...
The last non-spoilery thing I recall watching was Liv's grandma's recipe deviled eggs.
I'm going to have to look into this now. 'Cause if there's more Resident Alien imminently arriving that I haven't seen yet, my day has just been made.
I feel like August 10th was discussed in... Fine details are not my strong suit right now. However, if you're not familiar with Resident Alien, it's a very, very lovely... It is quite lovely. For all that it's hard to categorise. It's very funny.
It's really bizarre, but it
has Alan Tudyk, the actor.
So it's already going to be awesome.
Yes, exactly. Steve the Pirate pretending to be a guy. No. Yeah, Steve the Pirate pretending to be a guy who is pretending to be a human being. because he is in fact an alien
Yeah.
who is inhabiting the body of Alan Tudyk's character. And it's just fantastic. Here is a line from the show that made me laugh so hard I genuinely almost fell off my sofa.
Nice.
It was just so great. He says that, so Harry, the alien, he does not understand human behaviour. He thinks a lot of it, he just thinks it's a bit stupid.
Yeah.
Really. And so
Fair point,
he said,
really.
he says, birthdays are the stupidest. I don't understand why humans celebrate birthdays. Everyone on Earth has been born. It's nothing special. It's a participation award.
Yeah. I find myself, like, I think one of the most common lines from popular culture that I use is specifically his sort of cadence when he says, "This is some bullshit."
It's so good. It's so good. There's just so much about it that's so good. Honestly, it's the kind of show that could be much less high quality than it is, and I would still love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be shot on handy cams over a weekend.
And it could have like fairly lame storylines, and it's getting quite nuanced and complex in the second series. They investigate a lot more,
getting all kinds of stuff,
smaller characters, and all the stuff that you enjoy about a second series, or sometimes people don't enjoy. But it's all that stuff has been really good. But even if it wasn't really good, it would still rock. And it's got we discussed this. It's got such an excellent child actor in it.
Oh yeah.
Child actors are not always great, let's face it.
No.
But yeah, both those kids are brilliant. Anyway, the reason that I'm even talking about this is because...
All right, we don't have a Resident Alien podcast, although we could.
Oh, we so could. If I had time, that would be a thing.
Yeah.
One thing I do not have right now is time. But we were watching... So Harry also loves to eat. He loves human food and crime dramas. But he really loves pie, and we were watching a scene the other day in the diner in this little town that he lives in, and I was like, holy shit, that is the biggest pie I have ever seen. But by which I mean, like, it was the deepest pie I've ever seen. What's better than pie? More pie. Really, really big pie. So anyway, back to the big pie.
That's where we got here. Right, okay, good.
Yeah, that's how we got here, sorry.
Super.
I can't apologise, it's just who I am.
Yeah, no.
So, secret, as I said, it's comprised of two pie roots, both of which I found quite interesting. It is a past participle adjective from cicernere, Etym points out, meaning to set apart, to part, or to divide. Now, the etymology of the word cicernere or cicernere, however you pronounce your Latin, I pronounce mine, well, basically on a whim.
However you want.
Most of the time. Yeah. And the C part, the SE, means without or apart, as in separate, on one's own. And the cernere or kernere part means to separate. From the pie root, spelled Krei, cray, to sieve, as in to discriminate, because what a sieve does is it separates things out. So if you discriminate or distinguish things, you separate them, and to set apart a separated thing is to create a secret.
Nice.
The meaning, etym again, is something studiously hidden or concealed, what is not or should not be revealed in English, as we said, is from the mid-15th century. It's not often that you get such a, I like to call these Lego words, click, clunk, Lego, put two pieces together, you get yourself a second word. And I went off to the University of Texas at Austin Linguistic Research Center Indo-European Lexicon of Pi, Etymon and IE Reflexes. And discovered something interesting about the se prefix always say prefix, prefix. It is in fact prefix, previously discussed. It's used often, a word-forming element in words of Latin origin, etymology calls it. And it generally means to be apart or to be away or away from. And it's originally sort of like by one's self, like on one's own. And etymon directs you there to the entry for the word idiom. And I kind of thought, that doesn't sound anything like any of these other words. It's basically what I was thinking. So here's what it has to say in the idiom entry. This is from pi, swed yo, suffix form of root, swe. The W here is in brackets. So se or swe, as it became. It's the pronoun of the third person and reflexive. In other words, it's a word that refers back to the subject of a sentence. You can translate it as like we ourselves. Like my own self kind of thing. And I was like, so idiom, that's an interesting kind of divergence. I wonder what other cognates this pi root has. So I had a look on the mighty pi etymon list, and I discovered all sorts of interesting things.
Cool.
It gives us the word bosun, and I should point out that bosun is of course spelled
boatswain.
Always worth. I love the self-congratulatory cleverness that I feel in my smug little heart when I know a thing like that. So a bosun is the petty officer on a ship. Then the opposite of that feeling, I believe you pronounce this word cacoethes. It's spelled Cacoethes.
Jeez.
It's a lovely looking word. It means a mania or an insatiable desire.
Oh.
It also gives us consuetude, a custom or social usage. It gives us custom. It gives us desolate, desuetude, disuse or discontinuance from use. It gives us ethic and ethnic and ethno and ethos and all of these eth words. It gives us also gossip and hetaira, which is a highly cultivated Greek courtesan.
Oh. Okay.
It gives us all of the words that begin idio, idiom, idiot, idiopathic, idiopathy.
Idiosyncratic, all that.
It gives us a Khedive, Khedive, a Turkish viceroy in Egypt. And it gives us the equally lovely Khotanese, capital KH, an ancient language of Xinjiang. It gives us mansuetude, which means tameness or gentleness. It also gives us mastiff, as in the dog. Nisi and quasi. Then some that are a bit more recognisable as this swe root. We have words like seduce and seduction, self, which makes good sense.
Yeah.
Sib, as in sibling. Sick. Then so and soder, sodality, meaning brotherhood. And all of the words that mean aloneness, soul, solitary, solo, solitude, solipsism, all of these types of words. It gives us it gives us suicide. It gives us also sullen, swain, which I immediately wondered to pronounce that son, which is a peasant or a rustic, and swami, a Hindu ascetic or religious teacher. What a lot of bang for a really, really little unobtrusive buck. But when you consider how much human beings love to talk about themselves and the various different complexities involved with the contemplation of oneself, I suppose it makes sense that this is a pi root that's been, it's cast its seed widely. It's gotten into a lot of places. So the etymon is se, that se prefix that we find in Secret. They define it as self or one's own within the semantic field of owning or possession. And then we get that second pi root, cray. Etymon line gives it as to sieve, thus distinguish or discriminate or distinguish. And it gives us words like ascertain and certain. It also gives us crime and criminal, critic, criterion, decree, discern, discrete, discriminate, as in synonyms discriminated. It gives us also excrement, which is quite lovely, and excrete, because of course there is a separation happening within that process. It gives us riddle, which is oddly translated as a coarse sieve, and it gives us secret, and it gives us secretary. So the sieving out of the important things and the keeping those things to oneself is how a secret is made. Very, very interestingly, the University of Texas at Austin Linguistic Research Centre Indo-European Lexicon Pokorny Master Etymon Pi Etymon and IE Reflexes list has only one English cognate for this Pi root. Yeah, I found that very interesting because generally speaking, Etymonline has a whole lot of information about Pi, but the University of Austin at Texas has like all the information about the Pi Etymon. But in this case, it's the other way around. So it's given, they give the meaning as to appear or to show forth, the semantic field being to show. And the English cognate that's given is Sri, S-R-I, as in the country Sri Lanka. And that's defined as a title of respect for a distinguished Asian Indian person, generally male, I believe. So yeah, I'm not quite sure where the sieving got to, but I looked thoroughly through that index and found that this was definitely the Pi root that I was looking for, but did not have all these other cognates to kind of show off.
Interesting.
So I quite like that my investigations into the word secret, it gave me some information that I found interesting, and I hope you do too. But also there were things that I could not sieve out within my research, and well, maybe I'm just not supposed to know those things.
It's got an agreeable side to it. I like that. I wonder if it was. So ever since you said there was a Pi root that looked familiar.
I was sure that we'd talked before about the sieve aspect of cray. But
See, when you said desolation, at one point we had a conversation about the desolation of Smaug in The Hobbit.
We did.
And maybe it was when you did devastate? Maybe? I have to look it up.
Yeah, I thought... I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked and I just couldn't find it. I just couldn't. Short of going through and listening back to every single episode, I don't know how I would have found it. But
when you said that, it was interesting because the phenomenon you're describing where you pick a word and you're like, I'm sure we've talked about this. It happens all the time to me. And there's a section for anyone who doesn't know, there's a section on our website where you can sort through. You can basically it's just a list of all the words that we've featured as like the main words for the episode. And you can sort through, you can search by word and it'll take you to the episode where we talked about that word. It obviously, we go on a lot of tangents. I don't know if you've noticed, but
I believe that's a thing we might occasionally do from time to time.
It doesn't list all of the words we end up talking about, but the headlines from each episode. And I'll do that as I set that up because I wanted a quick way of making sure I hadn't already done a word before. Like, that's why I made that part of the website, because it just made it easier. But this, you said desolation is one of the cognates or one of the other descendants of that Pi root. And then I was like, oh, that's the one. We've totally done desolation or desolate or something. And I looked up and I was like, or we haven't.
However, desolation was one of the... I'm busy trying to find it. Yeah, desolate. It's one of the cognates of the SE prefix part.
That's what I
mean. It is possible that the SE prefix part has been one of the words. It's been
It does seem to have a lot of different
an aspect of one
yeah.
of the words that we've discussed. But
one of my
it could well
favorite
be that one.
sort of not archaic, but at least more esoteric uses of secret is as a verb.
Nice.
To secret something away is a neat usage, and I like it a lot. It doesn't get used very often, but to have verbed an adjective is a fun thing. So
we do enjoy verb and adjectives.
Yeah, very cool. Secret. Yeah. I like it. I have a word that's not is sort of the opposite of secret in a weird way.
Okay.
It's not, because the opposite of secret is like public or well known or something, but it's like it's antithetical to a secret, because my word is dazzle.
Ooh, that's fun to say.
It is fun to say. So, like, it's funny because that was my first reaction too when I kind of thought of the word, came to mind, and I went, that's a fun word to say. And lest anyone be lulled into any sort of misapprehension that we are indeed professionals or erudite scholars or anything, that pretty much sums it up, right? Like the fact that both of us, our exact first reaction was, that's a neat word to say.
Yeah.
It's nothing more complicated than that. It's just...
sometimes, like, why do people like the things they like? Sometimes there's a reason. But a lot of times it's really the just because. I'm very interested in the just becauses of the world. Like things don't always have to have a well-researched, evidence-based reason. I mean, if you're like going to take drugs or follow a course of medical treatment, then there should be some sort of evidence-based science going on.
Ideally.
But like why we like the things we like, I don't think there's any kind of hierarchy within that.
No, probably not.
Is it better to like something because you've researched it for 20 years and you know absolutely everything about it? Or is it better to like something because it reminds you of something that happened to you when you were a kid that you really enjoyed? Or even something more random and esoteric than that?
Like, it's fun to say.
It's fun to say, exactly. Doesn't need to be any more than that. But you are going to tell us more.
I don't think so. I am going to tell you more, yeah. So, buckle up. So dazzle first shows up as an intransitive verb in 1481 in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Now, I feel like I was expecting dazzle to be much younger.
Yeah, I was sort of surprised by that too. And side note, and again, tangent alert, I learned the other day on Twitter, which I don't care what people say about it, it's a cool place to be, that the name Tiffany is actually from the medieval period.
Have I never sent you the Tiffany video? I have definitely sent you the Tiffany video.
Have you?
The Tiffany video came to me from my excellent friend Joe, who every time I see Joe these days, I try very hard to get him to be on our podcast.
Oh yes,
basically.
You've told me about Joe.
And yeah, it's... He says he hates the sound of his voice, and I told him he doesn't have to listen.
No.
I think it would be neat for him to come and talk to us about words. However, cool. Joe sent me, basically it was one of these, I saw this and knew you would like it kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's a little animation about the name Tiffany, and it's fantastically interesting roots.
Yeah, it's neat. And of course, no like author or otherwise creator of period pieces or high fantasy fiction that draws a lot from the medieval period would ever name a character Tiffany, because people would just think it was absolutely ludicrous that,
I'm busy thinking about
castles
Terry
and jousting,
Pratchett.
that Tiffany, well, Terry Pratchett can do what he wants and will and did, but
the whole point of Tiffany being called Tiffany is that it appears to be madly incongruous.
Yeah.
But in fact turns out not to be particularly.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so dazzle is older than we thought. And it means So the way that OED describes it is, of the eyes, to lose the faculty of distinct and steady vision, especially from gazing at too bright light. Ooh. So, and so it started out as an intransitive verb, meaning that. By 1536, it shows up in the OED as a transitive verb. So it's like you have to, it dazzles the eyes or dazzles the senses, or it has to have that, the object to it by then. But again, same underlying meanings, usually specific to overpowering vision, especially by way of a bright light. 1561, we got a citation that talks about a figurative usage. So it's no longer specifically having to do with vision, refers to the mental faculties of a person being overwhelmed by, quote, brilliant or showy qualities. So this, I think, is the closest... it's the closest to the etymology of the word. This kind of overwhelming the faculties and the quote unquote figurative use. And I should point out that so we just went from 1481 to 1561. So that's an 80-year span. And we've talked about this before, that 80 years, 600 years ago, it was sort of a much shorter time in terms of development of things. Yeah. Than 80 years is from sort of 1850 onwards, or even 1800 onwards. So it's kind of hard to rule out any of those three senses as being the earliest or the origin, especially because the ones that are cited in 1480 are sort of clinical. They're talking about a certain sense, and it's kind of the kind of thing that would be likely to be written down first, because it would be written in a journal. It's a bit more empirical, textbook. Isn't it? Yeah.
A recordable event, a recordable action.
Yeah, exactly. And so and then by 1561 you get figurative, but figurative usages are often not of the kind that would be written down necessarily, especially back in the time when writing things down was a much, involved much more effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Technical prowess than it would today, for instance. So, and the other thing is that the earliest, the 1481 example was a William Caxton work. Good old Caxton.
Sorry.
And so it's, I don't know, the earliest sense, the OED classifies it as being specific to vision, and it lumps it in with that. But I kind of go, well, what if good old Billy Cax was just using the figurative, and he just happened to be writing about vision?
I'm sorry, that no.
I thought I'd try it out.
No. That's not a thing. It's not going to be a thing. Stop that.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. Somewhere Kevin Stroud is just making a note to roll over in his grave later on because of that.
Yeah, I'm not even dead yet. However, when I get there, there's going to be some rolling.
Exactly. Spent all this work researching my stupid proper podcast, and you come along calling him Billy Cax. No.
It's like you can't call Chaucer Jeff, and you can't call Billy Cax.
Jeffy C and Billy Cax.
And I object to Brexit just as much from a semantic, linguistic point of view as I do to it politically. I remember when people first started to use the word Brexit, and I genuinely was like, well, this will all be over by Christmas, because that is the worst portmanteau I have ever heard. It makes me feel a little bit sick in my mouth. No way will people be using this word. It's fine. The campaign is doomed.
I don't know. Heinz has a product here called Mayo Chup, because it's mayonnaise and ketchup put together, and it's
just no.
If any of these had been tweeted by Helen Zaltzman, they would have had the hashtag portmanteau.
I was just going to say this is definitely a portmanteau situation. Yeah. I don't know if there's a word for the offensively try hard. I'm sorry, that's what I'm calling this. It was offensively try hard to refer to him as Billy Cax, in the same way that Benifer and all that sort of shit.
Oh yeah,
remember when couples go
names getting All right, so apologies for that. So when the eminent William Caxton used it in the work that is cited as 1481. I just feel like he may well have been using it as a figurative, like but he's talking about dazzling the eyes, but then it gets lumped in as, oh, it must be that it's specific to vision. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So anyway, we don't know which one came first, but what does seem to be the case is that the idea of it being something that overwhelms the mental faculties is the closest to its etymology, because this etymology involves one of my favorite little historical linguistic truth nuggets. I've talked about it before. Daniel from Because Language introduced it in their clip for our 100th episode, and it is the frequentative le suffix from Middle English. It's awesome, and it just makes so many words make so much more sense.
Oh,
and in this
Dazzle,
case,
of course, is right.
Right.
Continue.
So you get things like chuckle and jiggle and giggle and buckle and all the rest, which are all super fun to say. But in this case, it's the frequentative le suffix with the word days at the beginning.
Ah, of course.
So if you are
Of
dazed,
course, Ryan. Of course.
Of course. if you're dazed, you're dazed. If you are dazed over and over again rapidly, you might be looking at a really bright shimmering light, and it dazzles you or dazzles you. And so that's where that comes from. So it's daze, and daze has had basically the same essential meaning since the 14th century. So it's very old, and it sort of always meant the same thing. Although, interestingly, the first usage of daze seems to specifically be related to cold. So if you have colded yourself stupid, you've been dazed.
Oh, that's really interesting. Also because it sounds a bit like froze.
Yeah. And it's there's a folk
beyond
etymology
the realms
for you.
of folk etymology, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is like
That's blog etymology, that is.
this is to etymology what putting a load of things in a microwave and seeing what happens is to cooking.
Yeah. Or what the name Billy Cax is to historical linguistics.
Exactly.
So yeah, it originally meant stupefaction
like
through cold. And further on the interesting path is that the only Germanic language that has a cognate word is Icelandic. So
Awesome.
It would be to do with cold, then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. So that's basically it. Dazzle is you've been dazed over and over again. Originally it was through cold, then it was just general stupefaction that happens through bright light or something bright and showy that just kind of overwhelms you. I think it's been definitely sort of watered down over the centuries, because
most things have, Ryan.
As a lot of things have. Yeah. Some things get stronger. A lot of things tends to get softened as the ravenous passing of time. But another neat little connection that I found. So two last little things just to put some sprinkles on top of this one is also a side note. Do you know how long it took me to figure out that hundreds and thousands were what you people call sprinkles? Forever.
Oh.
Like, genuinely long time. I like to think, yeah.
I just
I've heard
assumed
them
that you
referred to
wouldn't
that.
have heard that term. Yeah.
Well, I've heard it before. And I was just like, it's always one of those things that's just like, oh, the British. And then I move on with life. And but I never actually knew what it was. And I was listening to an off menu episode, and hundreds and thousands were their secret ingredient for the...
In fairness, British English is a bit mental. So hundreds and thousands could refer to literally anything. that is numerous. It could be like hundreds and thousands is a slang term for a crowd, or it could be like hundreds and thousands it's to do with the multiple consciousness theory of the universe, or it's like little sugary things you put on donuts and stuff.
Yeah.
Also, you don't generally having hundreds and thousands on donuts is a very non-British thing. The reason that donuts have popped in my head is the first experience that I had of the word sprinkles, as in hundreds and thousands, was from watching The Simpsons.
Right.
And of course, Homer
in the
eats
context of donuts.
with sprinkles.
The sprinkled donuts.
And it was like, oh, that's what Americans call hundreds and thousands. Oh, yeah. I had no idea. But yeah, hundreds and thousands, I get that that's a complicated one. It could literally have meant anything.
It's not very intuitive. But anyway, so...
like English is in any way intuitive.
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough. That's fair.
If that was the case, we would literally not be here having this conversation at all. When
you brought up idioms, or just the word idiom earlier, and how in context of the word secret, and I was like, yeah, everything about that makes sense, because there's nothing that brings up how many idioms you use in everyday life, like having a rudimentary English, like not young, but a new English learner around you all the time, like we do now. And so I mentioned to the Ukrainian woman who's living with us, I said, I'll drop you over there. And she looked kind of horrified. I was like, oh, right. Stupid English. Okay, so drop does mean doing this. I do not intend to pick you up at all, let alone drop you on anything.
It's funny.
It also means bring you to a place. It's like, why?
It is really interesting to realise how much of what you say only makes sense within a given context. I don't know if I mentioned this a minute ago, by the way. The reason that idiom has that that it's a cognate of that se, self, pi root, is that the Greek word idiomai that it comes from means appropriate to oneself or particular to oneself, which is, idiomatic is the things that only those people do. Yeah. The things that only I do and the people like me do. Nobody else like us does that. But I have been discovering this lately. All I have in my head at the moment is Pilates. All I have in my head. Yeah. And so there's a piece of Pilates apparatus called the Cadillac. Part of the Cadillac is called the push-through bar. The push-through bar is a U-shaped piece of metal on hinges attached to two uprights. And it can circle around 360 degrees. And it's made of metal. And then you attach it to springs. Okay, so it's, we're quick to point out that this is potentially a dangerous piece of kit. It's a heavy metallic thing and it's under spring tension. So when you're using it, you have to be aware that it's under spring tension. Do you know how often you say idiomatically, oh, just let go of the bar? And what you mean is, we are finished now with the bar and you do not have to hold on to it any longer. However, my teacher made it very clear to us that while it's perfectly natural to say this in any other context, it is extremely unwise to say it in that particular context, because actually if you have a person holding on to a solid thing and you tell them to let go, they open their hands. Yeah. Bad things happen. Forces ensue, springs go boing, and teeth get broken. Yeah,
yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Don't drop anyone anywhere, except what?
Yeah, like it's such a weird thing. Also, am I right in thinking that idiot comes from, it was the Greek sense of you're not interested in sort of the public life and political life, you're sort of self-centered, and that was where idiot comes from? Is that you're inwardly focused and someone who's not interested in politics or the civic duty, or I think that's where idiot
I have
comes
never heard this before. What I've just a very quickly etymon line linked to it because I was still looking at the page. It's from Latin idiota, ordinary person, layman, outsider. Greek idiota is layman, person lacking professional skill. But so literally private person as opposed to one taking part in public affairs. Used patronisingly for ignorant person. Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
In that case, anyway, I am absolutely an idiot at the moment. Well, I
so back to sprinkles.
Sprinkles.
To put some sprinkles on Dazzle. I have two sprinkles to put on two. I have 200 or 1,000.
Had hundreds and thousands my way into. I don't know where I was. Forgive me. I am an official etymological idiot.
So one neat thing is the Mr. Burns-esque, speaking of Simpsons, pejorative dastard, D-A-S-T-A-R-D.
Outstanding word.
It's a great word. I only ever think of it as an adverb, like a dastardly villain or a dastardly plan.
But one can, in fact, be a dastard.
But one can, in fact, be a dastard. And in this case, the DAS in dastard is days. And then the TARD or the ARD ending is the same as bastard, coward, dullard, sluggard, drunkard.
So great.
It's the pejorative, like a pejorative suffix, basically. And so what was interesting is I looked this up. I didn't write the reference down because it wasn't as interesting as some of his others, but I looked it up in Smith, in synonyms discriminated, and it is in the sort of basket with coward and poltroon, interestingly, which I have heard of before but didn't really know a lot about. But
Another
dastard.
Excellent Mr. Burns insult.
Yeah, exactly. But a dastard was originally, at least, or at one point, a coward, but someone who is more originally than that was just this person who epitomizes the state of being dazed, was a dastard. And the other thing
cool.
that the other place Dazzle shows up is the tactic of painting splotches on the side of a ship to camouflage a ship amidst sort of the sparkly reflections of sunlight on the water. Ship's camouflage is called dazzle. To dazzle a ship is to camouflage it.
Oh, that's
and frankly,
beautiful.
I don't think the Navy's even trying to shake off the village people, stereotypes when even their camouflage is just called being dazzled or dazzling camouflage. It's like, you might as well just lean into it at this point. It's perfect. But dazzling the ship and dastard all comes from being dazed over and over again, and that's where we get dazzle.
That's awesome. I was reading recently about, I cannot remember what particular rabbit hole led me to this piece of information, but so during the First and Second World War, American Navy personnel who were homosexual used to call themselves Friends of Dorothy. Sorry, not First World War, Second World War,
Right.
because of the Wizard of Oz. Just,
Okay.
being a fan of Judy Garland and her fabulous, dazzling life seems to have been something that, so a friend of Dorothy, and it was used in such, it was an idiom that was repeated and kind of became well known. So much so that there was an operation launched within the Navy to track down Dorothy. They believed that she was an insidious individual who was spreading homosexual propaganda and
making everyone catch the gay.
Yeah. So being a friend of Dorothy implies that Dorothy is a real person. I mean, she's a fictional person, but yeah, I would love to see the minutes of a serious US Navy meeting where they discuss tracking down Dorothy.
Oh yeah.
Like particular,
awesome.
Can you imagine a meeting like that where there's somebody in there who knows what it means but feels that they can't tell all these staid, stern 1950s men?
Because there would be.
It would just
somebody
be
in that room was giggling wildly to themselves the entire time. I want to see the Doctor Strangelove type Stanley Kubrick, Peter Sellers collaboration just for that one scene, just like a short film involving that.
Exactly that scenario.
That'd be awesome.
I don't know. It's one of these things that I always mean to do a bit more research on, prefixes and suffixes, because they're so interesting. When you were talking about the LE thing that Daniel mentioned in the 100th episodes clip,
yeah,
it immediately made me think. I've no idea where this came from, this phrase, but I've seen it on the internet several times in 7 different places, and I just love it. And it's just a single sentence that says, "Dumplings imply that there is a single large dumple." Just wonderful.
I like that a lot. I like a lot of those implies the existence of X memes. They're by and large, they're all great.
But yeah,
that's awesome.
I feel like the Dumple, it sort of gives me vibes of. Have you seen the Mitchells versus the Machines?
Oh, it's so good.
So good. As I was asking you that, I was thinking, oh no, please don't let this be another one of those crazy ass situations where for some reason Ryan hasn't seen something that he would love so much his brains might leak out of his eyes. But it's good.
It's really good.
But the gigantic Furby, that was the sort of vibe. When I imagine the one large Dumple, that's sort of what I think of. Or
like Totoro from My Neighbor Totoro. That's
the dumpling.
That should be a dumpling. That should be a
oldest,
Dumple.
Most powerful. That is the Dumple.
The ancient Dumple. I like it.
Cool. Dazzle.
What a dazzling secret.
Secret Dazzle sounds like a purveyor
Secret
of...
Dazzle is,
a purveyor of cheaply made sex toys in like the 1980s. So here's another fairly niche British English factoid, but there used to be a smutty magazine published in the UK called Razzle.
Oh, okay.
Razzle was a sort of, to be honest, I actually don't know if it was a soft porn effort or if it was, well, medium to hard. How does one actually define such a thing? But yeah, Razzle was the sort of, like, I don't know. Is this entirely a British thing? But like, when I was a kid, back in the mists of the time, before the internet existed, found pornography in hedges and at the side of the road.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a thing where that was where you discarded it, and then other people would just like pick it up, particularly small boys who, couldn't go into shops and buy such a thing.
Yeah. But
finding a Razzle at the side of the road, that would be a thing of great excitement.
Like, there's your weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, before them, gather round, children, and let us tell you a time before Google and YouTube.
Before you could see naked people doing all sorts of naked things anywhere at any time you wanted.
Yeah.
Without anyone really ever knowing you were looking at it.
No.
Wow.
You had to find it under a bush at the side of the road.
I mean, it almost sounds like Tolkien, doesn't it? Like, oh yes, children, come and listen to the legends to a time when pornography grew in the hedgerows.
It was only available in small caches left by people determined to carry on the tradition, leaving it for the younglings.
I was sort of wondering if like maybe it just grew there.
Yeah.
So give them the old razzle dazzle.
Razzle Dazzle was incidentally from the 20s because of course it was.
Of course, yeah. That I'm in no way surprised to hear that.
No. I felt like it went without saying, but because it got brought up, that's what it's from.
I feel like more people should say the things that go without saying.
It would certainly clear a lot of things up, I think. Just make things easier.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard in this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.